All right, for those of you that are here for the vehicle for sale ad that's running on Craigslist, I'll do my best to keep the video as short as possible and just give you a real brief history on the bus. Now, originally we got this to use with a band. We were going to be using it for regional stuff, and we had already been looking at small used RVs and Super Duty trucks, and they just wanted too much money for them. We were trying to avoid having any kind of vehicle payments. Now, somebody in the band suggested, hey, why don't you look at getting a school bus? They knew that years ago I had one, and I wasn't thinking about that just because we didn't need something that big. My last bus was a full-size bus, and it got like 5 or 6 miles to the gallon end. So we didn't need something like that. And they suggested, no, not a full-size one, maybe a short bus or something. Didn't think of that, so I started the search and actually went out and found a couple of buses. People were wanting too much money for them. They were wanting $5,000 and $6,000 for them. You get up there and they had transmission problems, or they needed a lot of engine work or other things, so we held off. But in the meantime, I had put my name on the list with a handful of dealers that deal with commercial vehicles. And right before Corona hit, it was like probably about I want to say a year and almost 3 months later, I get a call from one of these dealerships and said that they had some short buses in, and asked me if I was interested. I said, yeah, I'm definitely interested. I spoke to the guy, and he told me what he had and gave me the history on the vehicle. He said, look, he said, we go in and buy these from the bigger districts. Our mechanics inspect them. We make sure that there's no underlying engine issues, transmission issues, or excessive corrosion, or anything that's going to make the vehicle where it's just non-feasible, or something that's going to take way too much money to go into it. And he told me what he had and told me, said, if you want one of these vehicles, we can have it driven to you. You can take it to a certified mechanic. If they say it's anything other than what we're telling you, we'll do a compromise on the price with you. But I had like a 30-day window to do that, so I thought fair enough. So I got this vehicle, and it drove. It ran good when I first got it. And the way the mechanic was explaining it to me is, look, if you're going to be doing it local for local shows, you'll be just fine. But if you're going to be getting it out and doing regional stuff, I suggest you do what we do to it, which is go through this thing and make it what they call fleet ready. And basically what they do is they go from the tip of the bus to the back of the bus and get everything right. This way they can sell it to a smaller district. And he said, what we do, he said, we buy these buses in bulk. The more we buy, the better the price we get on them. He said, we get these buses, and for this bus, for instance, he said, we may not give but $2,500, $3,500 for it. He said, by the time we sink our work into it with mechanics fees and anything we do to it, he said, we can have between $10,000 and $12,000 in it. He said, we'll flip this bus for $25,000, $35,000. He said, the thing is, most schools want the full-size buses. And he said, so what we do is get these small buses, and we just make sure that they run good, that there's not anything major with them. He said, we still can double the price. We get it for $2,000, $4,000. He said, we can sell it to somebody and make a profit off of it. He said, with our full-size buses, he said, they flip pretty fast. He said, with these, not necessarily as much. He said, but, he said, we still make a profit. He said, because the people out in public want these buses because they make good work trucks. So I decided to get it. We got it here, and right before the coronavirus hit, we were just starting to do the work on it. And I had my mechanics inspect it, and they came back and gave it a clean bill of health. They said it's like he advertised it was, which made me happy. And I went ahead at his advice, and I thought, I'm going to get this thing and make it fleet ready. I want to make sure that when we get out with it, that we're not going to be caught in between a rock and a hard place with it. As you can see, the side of it's painted here. We did the other side the same way. That's because we were going to put band logos on it. We left it alone on the front and the back, so if you're behind it, it looks like a school bus. If you're in front of it, it looks like a bus. So we just left it like that. And the vehicle run good when I got it, but I went ahead and did all the service to it. And I'm just going to give you a brief explanation of what we did to it. Now, some of this is just common sense stuff like the oil change, the fuel filters, and stuff like that. My mechanic changed out the stabilizer shock on the steering. That's nothing but a shock that's on the front of the bus that makes the steering more stable. It gives it a feel like you're driving a Cadillac, and this thing drives great. We did all new soft lines on the brakes, front and rear. Eventually, I wound up changing the rear calipers on the bus. And we also changed out all of the valves and everything on the rear tires since we had them pulled off. Changed the drive shaft out. We did that just out of good measure because the other one was pitted a little bit. Now this went to another mechanic who took it to a second level, and basically what we did at his suggestion was we changed out all of the fuel injectors along with the glow plugs, along with all of the wiring harnesses. Everything that went back on this was original OEM parts. Now while he had the engine lifted up off the motor mounts, he found that there was a small exhaust leak. He said, "You want me to address that?" Of course we did. So he pulled both exhaust manifolds and changed out the gaskets. Now at my request, he pulled the intake manifolds and he cleaned them and put new gaskets on those, and I'm going to explain why here in a second. We were going to be using this bus for long hauls. He knew it also, so he said, "Look, while I've got this thing up, since you're doing all this work to it," he said, "let me drop the starter off of it and rebuild it. This way you know that you got a good fresh starter on it." To do that, he said, that's going to pretty much stop a couple future problems that can happen. And he said, "Just do it while the getting is good, and I'm already in here." So we did that. He also changed out the power steering pump on it along with the power steering lines. And we did that just to be sure that we weren't going to be caught with anything that was going to be leaking or any other future issues. Naturally, he flushed the radiator. He checked the coolant system for any leaks. That was all done. And then a friend of his, who was another mechanic, took it, and he specialized in electrical. He went through the whole electrical system on this thing, and the only suggestion he had on it was, said, "Look," he said, "change out the 48 volt power supply." And there's I'm not sure what they call it, there's a name for it, but there's a power supply that generates the high voltage that runs the fuel injectors. He said, "Look, you've already put money into these brand new fuel injectors." He said, "If it were me, change it out." He said, "It's not that much." And he said, "You'll wind up with a vehicle that's going to give you a good bit of service. Basically, you're making it fleet ready," is what he said too. We also replaced the batteries on it, and just out of good measure. So when I got the vehicle back, I had to do stuff to it also. I took the windows, stripped out all the caulking, recaulked everything to make sure there were no leaks, because all buses they're good about leaking water in between the layers of the vehicle, and you'll get rust on the outer side of it where the water can seep down in. That's just nature of the beast with this. And so we went ahead and dealt with all of that. I took the lights up here. I repurposed these because you're not allowed to have flashing school bus lights on a bus. They either got to be disconnected or repurposed. I took these and repurposed them and turned them into run lights, the red lights in the center, and an extra set of turn signals at the top that work with these down here. That worked out really nice. I did the same thing on the rear. I pulled all running lights off the bus, resealed everything all the way around. Now, I did not disengage the stop sign because we were going to pull the stop sign off of it, leave the mechanism in place, and we were going to put some sort of band logo up here, so if we were doing an outdoor whatever, we could turn back around and be a conversation piece, flip the button and make the sign come out. It'd have our band logo on it. And I did not disengage this. You're allowed to have a stop sign, you're just not allowed to flip it out in the public if you're driving someplace. You're not allowed to use anything that's school bus related. So other than that, the vehicle runs top shelf, and we'll get into it in a minute and let you guys hear it run, take a drive in it. So we'll take a peek at it. I've got to clean it up in here too. It needs to be cleaned up. But when I got the bus, I had to pull all the seats out of it. I also laid down a floor in it because originally we were going to be using it for the band, and we were going to mount some lightweight furniture in here, put curtains up. We were going to remove that window and put a 5,000 BTU AC unit that we could run off a generator. This way, when we did outdoor shows, the band would have a lounge to go to. The spouses of the band would have some place to go, because if you do outdoor shows, normally it's an all-day thing and you don't want to be out in the hot sun. So we were going to fix this up not as a camper or anything to try to drive around and, you know, the band like semi-sleep in it or something or live in it. It wasn't nothing to be used like that. We were using it to have a vehicle that we could have something comfortable when we did outdoor shows with. So I did do the floors. They're insulated underneath. The bus is quite quiet when you're riding down the road in it. But these buses make damned good little trucks. That's why everybody wants a short bus. And that's why it took over a year for us to land this one. As mentioned, you know, we did do the brakes on it all the way around. I'll just let you guys see what some of the lines here. You can see the fresh brand new pieces here. So this is done all the way around with the vehicle just to make sure that we had the brakes where they needed to be on it. Now I want to tell you something about this chassis. They use this same chassis on box trucks. They use it on some of their campers, same engine, same everything. They just drop a different shell over it and it becomes a different vehicle. Go buy a box truck. Go find a box truck and you'll find them beat up. And people are asking $30,000 and $40,000 for them, and they look like they drove them to hell and back. So, you know, getting it like this, it was a slight gamble, but for us it paid off. And the vehicle it handles and runs good. Just to give you another bit of history on it, there are no oil leaks on this bus. There are no coolant leaks on this bus, power steering or transmission fluid leaks or anything. Now, speaking of everything else we had done to it, I did have the transmission serviced, only preventative maintenance. We had the fluid changed along with the filters, and even before I did that, the vehicle shifts like it's brand new. The vehicle runs good, and it handles great. So for me now, at this point, it's just too much vehicle for my needs, because when coronavirus struck, it basically, you know, killed all of our shows that we had out of state. So I've been using it locally, and it's a great conversation piece, and that's all good. But it's more vehicle at this point in time that I need, and we're only doing local stuff now with what we're putting together. I just like to see this go to somebody who's actually going to give it a good home and use this for some sort of real purpose. I can think of a couple things right off the top of my head. This would be a great vehicle for a plumber to put bays in and hold a load of parts in. The same thing with an electrician. For that matter, even a mobile mechanic, because you could have a place in here to put a compressor and a tool bay in it. So this thing could serve quite a few purposes. Shoot, there may be another band out there that would like to have it. Somebody may want to use it for a schoolie, but regardless, the vehicle's been completely serviced. I've got all the paperwork on it of everything that I had done to it. Now, just to give you an idea, I spoke to the mechanics and I said, look, let me ask you a question. Put a value on this if I go to sell it. And they were telling me you shouldn't take anything less than $11,750 for it. So that would be the least I would take for it if it was my vehicle and I were selling it. That's all good. I'm not trying to make money off of this. I'm just trying to recoup some of the work that I had put into it, some of the parts I have into it. And right now it's almost a full-time vehicle, because my little truck that I'd normally drive just blew a head gasket a couple weeks ago, so I've been running this thing around. But on average, I drive it 2 or 3 days a week locally just to keep this thing on the road so it's not parked. I am willing to do some bartering, so somebody out there that may have an older truck, preferably something small, but not necessarily a small truck. Maybe you want maybe $2,500, $3,000 or something like that for it. I would be willing to take that as part of the payment on it. That would be good also, because right now my vehicle's in the shop. Don't know when I'll be getting it back, and I'm driving a friend's car that's letting me borrow, which is a no-no, but I've got something to get around in. But I'm driving it as little as possible, and I'm using this just for my local stuff. So that is on the table for anybody that may have something that they want to barter with on it. Now, my asking price for this is $8,500. That's firm. That's as firm as it gets. That's more than fair for this, because this will make somebody a good vehicle. When we get into it, you're going to realize there are no check engine lights. The vehicle will start right up, and it tugs right along with plenty of power. So thank you for viewing this, and there's more information on the Craigslist description if you want to read on it. Thank you. Okay, this is the first time the bus has been started today, so it will be from a cold start. Now, what I'm going to do before I actually start it is what my mechanic suggested doing, especially being a diesel. We're going to cycle this thing 3 times, and on the 3rd time, we're going to start it. Let me explain what we're doing here. So first thing we'll do, turn the key over, and I want you to see that everything's working. There's the check engine light. Now, in the background, it may or may not be picking up on the camera, but there's a buzz, and what I'm waiting on for this first cycle is for the fuel in the tank on the line coming up to the engine to pressurize it. Just did. That's my first time, so now I'm going to turn it off. Give it a couple of seconds. Let me zoom back in so you can see. Second cycle, and if you notice down here at the bottom there's a curly cue to go off. That's going to be the glow plugs. Okay, I'm going to shut it back off again. And on the 3rd cycle, when that glow plug light turns off, we'll crank up. which you see all the lights, include the check engine light. And normally this thing will crank. On a day like today, it's about 50 degrees, so it'll crank in about 4 seconds. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's almost like clockwork. Notice that the check engine light is off. Now before we take off, I'm going to let it warm up for a couple of minutes. It's a good idea with the diesel engine. Oh, I wanted to let you see the oil pressure. It's got great oil pressure. This is the dashboard here. Let you see everything in here. So what you guys are going to do with me now, we're going to go get lunch. So we'll take about a 12-mile drive, and I'll probably edit the video, speed it up, because I don't want to drag everybody on as we drive down the road. But we're going to take the vehicle for about a 12-mile ride, and I'll shut it down, and then you're going to hear it start up from a warm start, and you'll notice that it just immediately cranks right up. But this way you can see that the check engine light won't come back on. So we'll give the vehicle just another minute or two here to warm up. The main thing I want it to do is just stabilize a little bit, and that's always a good idea with the diesel. All right, we'll go ahead and take off here. As mentioned, this thing shifts, but the transmission is almost new in it, and you'll pick up on that. You'll be able to hear that as we're riding down the road with the vehicle. Hear how smooth it's shifting already. As mentioned, we put a lot of work into the vehicle because we were going to be using it as a workhorse, and I wanted to make sure that when the band took the vehicle out, that we knew we could trust it to do regional jobs with. So I had the mechanics advise me on everything they felt needed to be done to it, and we basically got this thing fleet ready. And that's an expression, as I mentioned earlier, that when you get these companies that buy the school buses out or other industrial vehicles, before they will sell them, they make them, I guess it's a phrase they coined called fleet ready. In other words, they go through it to make sure that the vehicles is running as good as possible when they cut it loose, and they know that somebody's going to be purchasing it, whether it's another school or a church or whatnot. Yeah, the engine's got plenty of power. we'll get it up here on a highway on this next turn we make about a mile ahead. And right now we're only going about 45 miles an hour on this little back road. I love the vehicle, but for right now, it's more vehicle than I need since I'm not going to be going out with the band and doing any kind of traveling. Originally, I purchased this to be a workhorse, and I mean, it's a good conversation vehicle. I drive it about 3 days a week, as I had mentioned, and it's a good conversation piece. And if I don't sell it, I'm not going to be really worried about it. I know what I got in it, and I know this thing will go probably a good ways before it needs any kind of work on it. But just for my needs now, it's more vehicle than I really need. And I'm hoping that somebody sees this, comes and checks it out, and gives it a good home and puts it to work. I'm driving with one hand and filming with the camera with the other one, so things may be a little bit shaky here. For that, I apologize. Let you see the dashboard. There's no check engine lights or any kind of arrows popping up on it. So we've been driving, I don't know, a couple of minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, or however long we've been driving. And we're getting ready to hit our highway up here. So when we get up here, I will pause the camera for a second and kick it back in. This way I can have a separate video on the highway, because I'll speed that up on the video so that I don't have everybody sitting here watching me drive for like 10 minutes. Okay, now we're on the highway, and in a couple of seconds here I'll take this video and speed it up. This way we can make the video shorter. Yeah, all turn signals, everything works, by the way. Yeah, this is a steep little hill. You can hear this vehicle. It doesn't have any problem, not whatsoever, climbing up. It's got power and then power to spare. So that's the good thing about the 450. And because this is a short bus, I can turn in tight areas like this right here. And these guys got my parking spot. That's not right. That's all. I got a place to park right here. Okay, now I'm going to shut it off in real time, and we're going to just give it a second here. I'm going to turn it back on, let you see the check engine light. I'm not going to put the seatbelt back on, so this buzzer is going to continue going. We'll crank it up, and you'll see the check engine light goes off. Notice how fast it cranks. Okay, you guys ready for some Mexican food? I am. Let's go get a bite. And then we'll come back and take this ship back onto the road and take it back to the house. See you on the way back. Okay, my food is here, including a nice ice cold glass of iced tea. Once we finish this up, we'll get back out to the bus and start it up and make our journey back. Take a standby. All right, lunch was good. And we're gonna crank the bus up again in real time that it's been setting. And we're gonna take a look at the dashboard so you guys can see that there are no check engine light errors popped up. And somebody may wonder why I went through the trouble to do this. Is because nobody wants to be taken advantage of and have somebody that's using a tool to reset everything and give up a false whatever. So here we go. I'm going to zoom in. All right, now I'm going to put my seatbelt back on and we'll do the drive back. Hopefully you can hear it shifting. As I had mentioned earlier, yeah, the transmission in this thing, man, it's good and tight. It just shifts like it's almost brand new. we're going to pause the camera out. And before we do that, once again, look at the dashboard. There's no check engine lights. Good oil pressure. Temperature's good. The battery showing it's charged good. And just so you want to see the mileage on it, let me pull it up here. That's the actual mileage on it as of right now.